The voice of Husker Nation is on the air. This is Hail Varsity Radio. Insight, opinion, expertise, along with the biggest names talking Nebraska sports. Join in with the show at 402-489-1240 or 1-800-825-5865. Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. Fridays here, and great to be back at Hail Varsity. We're here, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, and hope you're doing okay. It's been a little bit of a breather. We've snuck in some weekend editions. We've done some reaction shows, but hard hat is on for 2025, and away we go.
Some call the time we took away a breather. Some call it a bender. Either way.
Yeah, it just depends on the day. 489-1240, 489-1240, or 800-825-5865. Can find us on the Hail Varsity Radio Network. Can find us Hail Varsity YouTube. Like and subscribe there. Hail Varsity Radio Twitter at HVarsity Radio. A whole slew of portal names to tell you about on the defensive side of the football. It's a big one tomorrow at PBA. Nebraska and UCLA, that iconic brand from Westwood coming in. Mick Cronin. I love Mick Cronin, man. He is a feisty, tough coach, and UCLA is off to another great start under him, as is Nebraska basketball with Fred Hoiberg. Plenty of thoughts from the mayor and Bryce Williams. Their media session yesterday. So we'll get the lowdown on Nebraska basketball. Another sellout for PBA. You're going to brave the snowflakes that are falling here in the capital city in different parts of the state. It is going to be Snowmageddon, potentially. We'll get our starting five shout-outs going. Some thoughts on the college football playoff. Go Notre Dame. Saw a funny tweet earlier today, and it was from way back in 1981. And 100 years ago, Beano Cook used to come on the show before Beano passed. And Beano would come on, and we'd do it two segments. And then off air, Beano would talk about the good old times he had with Bob Devaney. Those tapes have been burned, but they were hilarious. They were glorious. And only Beano Cook could talk about the wild times with one Bob Devaney. But this tweet I sent you, Elijah, was talking, and Beano's a longtime Pitt guy. Well, he was watching the first ever regular season game between Penn State and Notre Dame. This was in 1981. It's like cheering for a winner of Stalingrad is how he referenced between Penn State and Notre Dame. So, you know what? If I'm going to circle a team to root for that's left, it is going to be Notre Dame. I've got a little bit of Notre Dame smile with just that 88 team. I remember that being a 10-year-old watching Tony Rice and crew go win the title. And it was all good. So Notre Dame is those Irish are fighting. They're doing well. They whacked Georgia last night, yesterday afternoon. So we'll touch on that. But plenty of hoops, plenty of Husker thoughts, and room for you here on this Friday.
And if there's a reason to root for Notre Dame, because I am of the opinion, I'm one of those people that has never quite liked Notre Dame. That's no offense to Notre Dame. It's just like, you know what? It always feels like they're the media's darling because they're independent and everyone likes Notre Dame. But
let's be honest. They're not even dating. They're just sleeping with the ACC.
Well, yeah, but it's like, I don't know. I don't like I'm trying to find a way to put this in eloquent terms that won't get me fired. Just the way that the media always talks up Notre Dame, and you look at their schedule, I know where you're going. They're that good.
Well, I think they are that good because they can tackle, for the love of God.
They're good this year, and if you want a reason to jump on the Notre Dame bandwagon in the college football playoff, it's Xavier Watts.
Yeah, for sure.
Guy is phenomenal on the back end, All-American, came back to school to work on his game, improved it, and man, he is all over the field every single time that Notre Dame defense is out there. If there's any reason to say, you know what, I can put my deep-seated distaste of Notre Dame behind me for a couple of weeks, it's Xavier Watts.
Well, 7 tackles, no completions his way yesterday, and Notre Dame gets downhill, man. They get downhill, they tackle, they're impressive. They are impressive, and you've got this trend of teams that have not had a bye week that are playing better. Of course, this is our first day back, and let's just call it what it is with the non-targeting call against Texas. It is atrocious that Arizona State did not have a chance for a game-winning field goal. With Arizona State's kicking, you're better off with a cigarette and a blindfold. That being said, that opportunity to win was ripped from Arizona State. Now, credit Texas on 4th and 13, making it happen and getting into overtime. But Arizona State got hosed because they are not of the SEC. Totally believe that. I'm going to go tinfoil hat here for 2 seconds. And someone told somebody in the replay booth, in my humble, outlandish opinion, that you're not making that call in this moment, and Texas will not lose on a walk-off field goal in regulation. There you go. You move forward. I mean, right? You've had Mark Mangino lose his Snickers over it almost a decade and a half ago down in Lawrence. Bo screamed BCS. That's why they make that call. So, listen, the SEC needs to be wrapped, baby. And they're getting to fewer and fewer teams that are available. Just Bevo that just moved into the neighborhood is left.
Well, let's be clear. Everyone who got a first-round bye got screwed. Maybe not as overtly as Arizona State.
Or Oregon.
I mean, Oregon got screwed. There's not a single team that had a bye that won this weekend.
No.
This week. Excuse me. It feels like a Monday.
Yeah,
right?
dude, it does. It does.
But, I mean, that is going to need some reworking in the playoff. I don't think reseeding is the answer, personally. No, reseeding after every round is not the answer. Why do you punish the team that pulls an upset by saying, you know what? Now you have to go play the number 1 overall seed. If you pull an upset on them, you got to play the best team after that. Like it comes down to matchups and it comes down to seeding. I think the body of work through the season determines, you know what, sometimes you just get a little bit lucky with your seeding. What I think you need to have happen is games on campus sites up until the championship. That's what I think it should be. That's how you give the teams that are the higher seeds the advantage. You know what? Go win in front of your home crowd every single game. That's a great advantage to have, to be able to be playing at your home field. That's what I think the answer is.
I think your auto
and also take away the buys.
I think your auto bid for a conference champion, you still want to keep the conference championship TV dollars happening. So that's your auto bid, all right? But you reseed based on strength of schedule.
Well, strength of schedule is such a flawed metric anyway. You know who the best strength of schedule teams were this year in the playoff? All the SEC teams.
Well, they were pretty good. And I was, 3 weeks ago yelling for Bama over Indiana.
And I vehemently disagreed with you on that.
No, I know. And Bama just decided not to show up. The best version of Bama is playoff, yes. But Bama was so hot and cold, right?
How many times do we see the best version of Bama?
You saw a half against Georgia,
yep.
Right? You saw a half against Georgia. I was wrong. Then you saw Illinois, because South Carolina and Ole Miss, I mean, they had great seasons, really good teams. But Illinois was ready to go, and Burt pimped them a little bit, and Illinois got a win. Who's with us?
Stephen Lincoln.
All right, Steve, what do we know?
Hello, Chris and Elijah. I know you guys have a full plate, so I'm going to get right to it, and I'll try to be brief. First off, I want to thank you for such a great programming the last couple days while you guys got a break with your past guests that you had pre-recorded. Once again, number 1 program, great guests, great interview. Number 2, I hope those Husker fans that did go to New York City possibly had a chance to dine at Ellen Stardust Diner, Katz's Deli, and or Knickerbockers. Number 3, Chris, I would like you to elaborate a little bit more about possible realignment in reference to conference champions getting that first-round bye. What say you, Chris?
All right, Steve, thanks for the phone call. Listen, you win the SEC, you win the Big Ten, you are in. Does Arizona State and Boise, do they deserve a bye? I mean, your Big 12's a Power 4 technically, but the ACC has been garbage in the bowl season. It's just one picture of one season. I know it's an ebb and a flow thing, right? Because you could say the Pac-12 before it got stabbed was the best conference last year. Best bowl record a year ago. and teams that were really, really impressive, and you had Washington getting to the championship game. So I think you got to look at it, and I think you got to really reward teams that have a 9-game conference schedule or have a deeper conference schedule devotion. The SEC needs to move to 9. And then, I think you need to look at teams that are willing to play some out-of-conference games still. Those 3 non-conferences, who are you playing? I know that the SEC is great at sprinkling in Samford or South Carolina State or somebody before the big rivalry end of November game, but Bama's been pretty good. LSU's been pretty good. Tennessee's been pretty good at going out of conference to open their season early in the year. So keep that going. Big Ten's done it. Notre Dame's, I know they date the ACC, but they also have typically 2 to 3 games with a Big Ten opponent, and now the SEC, the USC rivalry that's always existed.
But Connor Stalions, hopped on Twitter to discuss one thing that he thinks really needs to be factored in with the playoff discussion. It's the fact that
videotape.
Well, he was going for the 8-game schedule that the ACC and the SEC play, saying, if those teams go and schedule a premier out-of-conference game, that's well and good, but the Big Ten already has that within their own conference. Whenever you look at it, essentially the last game that you play as the Big Ten is equivalent to that final non-conference game that the SEC schedules against a great team or another power conference team. So you already have that built into your schedule. So you, by the Big Ten, going and playing your one premier power conference team in a non-conference slate automatically makes your schedule better because the SEC's got 3 teams that they're playing that aren't power conference. You have 2, which is an argument that makes sense to me, and it kind of underscores how sometimes flawed the strength of schedule is whenever you get in these conference echo chambers, which is what we're in right now because there's so little conference to conference early in the season, combined with the fact that teams rise and fall as the year goes on. You get stuck in your conference echo chambers. I just think do away with the buys, understand the seeding system is going to be flawed. If you want to go win a national championship, which should be the goal here, you got to go beat everyone in front of you anyway. I think just toss out the conference stuff in terms of seeding. You get auto bids if you get in, get rid of the first round buys, and just make all the games on conference sites or on school sites until you get to the conference championship game. I think that's the level playing field you're looking for.
I like the ability to have a bye if you've earned it, but you need to look at reseeding so it's not Ohio State v. Oregon. Oregon got absolutely screwed for being perfect.
Well, Oregon is going to have to go through Ohio State likely at some point anyway.
But
I don't want to look at the seeding. The seeding doesn't determine who wins the national championship. It determines your enjoyment watching from home, and I think it's unfair to the teams.
I think it's unfair for Oregon, though. I mean, Oregon was going to have to take on a team they beat a second time because of this setup. And they'd have been better off losing the Big Ten title game.
But if you want to win it all, they would either have to beat Ohio State or beat a team that beat Ohio State.
That's fine. But if you're going to face Ohio State, wouldn't you rather do it deeper into the playoff run?
You have to beat them at some point. Is the goal to go win one game in the college football playoff?
You've seen some rust, is what I'm saying.
That's fair, and that's why I think you do away with the bye. The bye has proved to not be an asset whatsoever to the teams.
I think
that's the first cut you make.
But you're gonna coaches, if they get the bye, they'll want to keep the bye to heal up and prep up.
That was the thought coming into this, but it turns out to not be a factor. Whenever all 4 of your teams that have a bye lose, I think it shows that the advantage that you tried to build in is not actually an advantage.
Maybe you're just taking on 3 teams from the north that are just physically tough.
That's also true.
So we'll dive into Fred Hoiberg, Nebraska-UCLA. Jacob Padilla going to be with us next hour. Thoughts on Creighton Marquette. Brian Christopherson from Husker 24/7 to lay out some portal names here in a couple of minutes. And we'll also hear from Fred Hoiberg. Just some things to lay out. What has happened is, as we go to football here, little birdies telling us that maybe you see Thomas Fidone pop up either in the portal or maybe looking towards an NFL draft declaration that's been out there. Jalen Lloyd currently, we're hearing, looking at Oklahoma State. Going down to Stillwater. Wish Lloyd the best. He's a hell of a ball player. Nebraska, though, continues to load up portal edition number 12 with Hardley Gilmore. Don't call him happy, but he can make Nebraska fans extremely happy with that speed, that athleticism, that talent, and, of course, the familiarity with his position coach here in Lincoln, Elijah. Nice get with the Big Red going 2.0 with another Kentucky wideout.
Yeah, and there's been, what do you call them, allegations swirling. I'm not just drama, generally speaking, whenever you get back to tampering. But I think we understand that in the modern college football, if you ain't
your
tampering,
position
you ain't
coach
trying.
Leaves, you go with him.
If you ain't tampering, you ain't trying. Can we just say that? It's such a moot point at this point to say, oh, that team was tampering, because there's no punishment in place. So if there's no punishment, there's no law.
I want
no rule.
I want screenshots of tampering text messages from you, Jim Mora Jr.
Well, think about it this way. If you have speed limits on the roads but no cops and no speed cameras, is there really speed limits? That's where we're at with tampering.
I end up finding them. I end up finding the radar. Let's give our shout-outs here. Our starting five in the stream with Hail Varsity. Jeff Snitley is in first. First in post-New York, Mr. Snitley, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty. Great Red Shark is here. Scott, good to have you in. Walter checks in and is asking if Ed is still on staff. Walter, we're on it. Appreciate you, brother. Real Matthew is here. Andrew checks in. And Anonymous is here. A very good lifelong friend of mine was the long snapper in the Byron Bennett snowball game. Oh, my Lord. Him and Joel Sneed going at it. NASCAR Eric's here. Wrestling Oranges is here. Snitley number 2 is here. More with Brian Christopherson on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Thanks for hanging out. Friday edition, back from the Bender or Breather. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, Hail Varsity Radio, Hail Varsity YouTube. Brian Christopherson with us here at Husker 24/7. BC's where you follow him. Read him and Brunsey and Schaaf. And he's gearing up for a monster Sunday night game, Minnesota-Detroit. First things first, though, Portal and Hoops. BC, how we doing? How is the subway?
Subway was good. I know maybe you were a little worried. I don't know. It just cut off there. Anything could have happened. I don't think you're that worried. But
I texted you. Are you okay?
Yeah, you did. You did. I'll give you that. It's a big difference this week. I'm sitting in my kitchen, and my biggest concern was that my Keurig machine was still filling up my coffee over there while we were going on air. So that's less stressful than getting on the subway for it. But I did enjoy our 35-second segment last week.
Well, the thing was
suspense,
and we got a call in right after you saying, "Oh, he's probably just under the East River right now." And I was sitting there thinking, I'm Sopranos mind. I'm thinking they already got him in the East River, waited at the bottom, but no, like the subway runs under the East River, and that makes sense. Yeah, that seems.
I would have been worried the same way you were there. So no, everything was fine. I had a really enjoyable time. I would say I didn't survive New York City. I thrived in New York City. That's how I felt. So it was a good experience.
So it was more dangerous watching special teams than it was actually riding the subway.
Yeah, that's not for children's eyes. We all know that. 10 blocks, I guess it ended up on the year. And that's an amazing statistic that you can have 2 times in one season where punts are blocked and the other team has the ball on your 2-yard line afterward. I think that was the exact situation twice in 1 year, which is almost impossible to pull off statistically, but they did.
Well, statistically speaking, the fact that you have a punt blocked, an extra point blocked, which is returned for a score, plus your negative in turnover margin, like, how do you win that football game? I mean, Nebraska, to their credit, the defense played great, the offense was great, but what a statistical anomaly. And I want to get your thoughts on Matt Rule's response after the game saying a complete overhaul of the special teams is needed. We still are kind of in the air about
the overhaul,
about Coach Foley's status. Like, what is your read on that comment, and what does it mean moving forward?
My read is hazy. I didn't know if for sure that meant just like look under the hood at every part that is required to fix this, or if that included a coaching shift, and I still am not completely sure on that. I'm not going to assume that there's going to be a coaching change there until it's announced. They've worked together a long time, and I know most guys would not survive the season that Ed Foley's special teams units had, but at this point, I'm not here to say I just think there's automatically going to be a change of who coaches it. If that decision is made, however, that he's going to stay, you definitely hope that every possible rock is turned over to get this thing fixed. Obviously, they feel like they've got some help on the way with a long snapper they think is going to be reliable and a new punter. And Bushini did a good enough job, but you hope that the next guy can be up to it and beyond. So those are going to be key parts no matter who leads the unit. The one thing I'll say about Matt Rule, he showed us during the regular season when he shifted with 3 games left as offensive coordinator that he's not afraid to make a big change midstream. And so I say that not because I think necessarily a change is going to happen at special teams coordinator, but I say it that he's a head coach that if he does stick with Ed Foley, I would say that at least he's shown that he's willing to make changes elsewhere and that he knows what's at stake. So if he sticks with Ed Foley, it's because he believes that he's got some answers and he can get this fixed. They just have to change some of the parts, but I don't blame the fan base for being uneasy about it right now.
Brian Christopherson with us, Hail Varsity Radio, Husker 24/7 Sports. BC, let's get into some of the portal additions and visitors. Your thoughts on Gilmore coming in from Kentucky, his fit in with Dana and what Nebraska wants to do offensively. What kind of skill set do you like?
Well, he had limited action, but if you look inside the numbers, he was definitely a deep ball threat. They targeted him a lot beyond 20 yards, and he had a decent hit rate on the few opportunities he had. He was kind of an early addition to college football. Like he was like 17 years old or one of those guys who got going really early. And so his upside is still in front of him. Like he's got a lot of his best days right ahead. And I think on this one, you show a little trust to Dakeil Shorts that he saw it up close what certain guys could do and what they can bring to the table, and thought he could be a nice fit and the guy you could develop in this program. And the fact that he, aside from injury, was going to play like he did play 5 to 7 games at Kentucky in the SEC, I think showed that he had something right off the bat. So the least of my concerns, honestly, is the 3 wide receiver additions. I think those are very good on paper. Obviously, it's got to be great on the field, not just on paper. We've played that game before where it hasn't translated, but I like that part, and I like him. I think they're excited about him. And when you couple him with Dane Key and Isaiah Hunter, who the more I've thought about Hunter and watched his stuff and sort of his season at Cal, I think that was a huge get, as big as any that Nebraska had so far.
And it feels to me, BC, like the wide receiver room, they may have the talent they want. Jalen Lloyd departs. It feels like you kind of get the like-for-like deep ball replacement. My feel is they might be done with wide receiver, at least guys that could be instant impact. But based on what you saw in the bowl game, where do you think Nebraska still does need help? They've been in the market for a right tackle. No really new developments there that I'm aware of. Defensively, still looks like they're searching for a couple more defensive backs and maybe some defensive linemen as well. But based on what you saw in the bowl game, where does Nebraska still need portal help in your opinion?
Yeah, I think you nailed it, actually, in asking the question. They need a couple of linemen still. I know Fahamo from Washington State, probably not saying it correctly, but everybody knows who I'm talking about. He was between Nebraska and Michigan and took a visit to Wake Forest. So I think he's still a possibility. It looks like linebacker's a spot where they're kind of honed in. They have the kid from Georgia Southern. Not a kid. He's played like 4 or 5 years of college football. In fact, won a game in Memorial Stadium in Frost's last game as a member of Georgia Southern, and has a ton of tackles to his name. So Marquise Watson Trent, he'd be, I think, a guy people would be kind of excited about. He's visiting right now. I know Mike Schaefer from our sites mentioned Trey Lathan from West Virginia as a backer that they was planning to visit. So we'll see if that comes forward this weekend, and he's got some experience. So I think backer's a spot where you could see 1 or 2 ads still, and you're right. Defensive back, it seems like they're not quite settled. I like their addition so far. Like Justin Redd and Andrew Marshall is one of my favorites because he's a return man, too, from Idaho, and I think he's going to be very versatile. But They got a lot of young guys in the secondary. I can see where, though, they might want to add one or two more just to feel like they got it all, filled out. So for competition's sake, heading into the spring.
BC, it looks like Davies is kind of a target from UCLA, the defensive back. Also, TJ Lindsey, the defensive lineman from Auburn.
Yeah, and whenever you look at these defensive backs, BC, do you think that Nebraska's portal shopping here could be a result of just differences between what Evan Cooper wanted in a defensive back and what John Butler wants in a defensive back? Because as you laid out, there's a lot of young talent in that room that I think you felt that the staff felt good about, but defensive back seems to be one of the more popular positions so far this offseason. Yeah,
there could be a little of that. Everybody's got a different eye on who is going to produce. I remember John Butler doing an interview. It was actually on the Huskers radio network in November, and he said that there was like 5 young guys. He kind of put a number on it that he really thought developed well. And I thought that was good, but I also thought, yeah, they're going to need to add more if they feel like, right now there's 4 or 5 they're kind of satisfied with and the others you're not sure about. So that makes sense to me as we watch this play out when I think about that quote and Nebraska maybe adding, when it's all said and done, 3 or 4 guys in the secondary. That adds up because I think as much as you liked what Donovan Jones did and Caleb Benning and Mari Sanders and some of these guys, this is the Big Ten, and it helps. I still think it makes a big deal to have like a 22-year-old guy out there who's played like 3 or 4 years, even if it was in a different uniform. So I think this coaching staff understands that too. You want to keep developing those guys. It doesn't mean you're giving up on those guys. And Donovan Jones, by the way, was one of the best stories of the Pinstripe Bowl. I thought he played great, and the stage didn't seem too big for him. So I'm not moving past what was done there at all. But you need to have that cocktail, right? You need to have that mix of guys who have been there, done that, and guys who are hungry, that are young.
BC, about 90 seconds, too little time. But Huskers and UCLA tomorrow. I know it's a big one for the Big Red. Mick Croton and number 15 UCLA comes in. Can Nebraska take care of the ball?
Yeah, that's the biggest thing, really. And you could tell it was everything on Fred's mind. You're going against a team in UCLA that's turned their opponents over more than 18 times per game. I think they average like 9.5 steals, leads the country in that stat. They're holding opponents to less than 59 per game. So they're very tough. I think they close gaps quick. You think something's there, it's not. And so that's been kind of a bugaboo for the Huskers so far. I feel like even the other night against Southern, the game was well in hand, but Nebraska got sloppy on like 3 straight possessions. And I've seen that a few too many times this year where there's like 2 or 3 in a row where it's like, oh, here's 4 points. It's okay against Southern. That's not going to work tomorrow at 1 p.m. on Fox against UCLA, ranked 15th in the country. So I think Nebraska can win this game. It's at PBA. They've won 19 in a row there. They feel confident. I think Bryce Williams on any given day can be the best player on the court. But Nebraska is going to have to bring the physicality and the same defensive intensity that UCLA does. And UCLA, by the way, they've been here since Thursday, so they're taking this seriously. They wanted to get used to the time zone. Maybe they're worried about the weather, but they've been in town for a while, so this is a big game for them too.
It is, and they've been road warriors. They got a road win against Oregon. They beat Gonzaga. They shook off the early New Mexico loss, and they are pretty feisty. They're not. They're not soft. Mick won't let them be soft, but love that 12th man at PBA. We'll see what happens at tip tomorrow, and BC will see you down there tomorrow. Thanks for a few minutes today.
Yeah, always enjoy being on with you guys, and glad I made it back from the subway unscathed.
We are so happy.
Yes.
Take care, man.
Thanks, guys.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Great to have you back. Hail Varsity, Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, 489-1240, 800-825-5865. Can dial up wherever you hear us. Can also jump in. Good to have Justin check it in as he's talking about Nebraska's search for a tackle. And you have, say his name.
Lili Fa'amoa?
Yes, I'll take a vowel, Alex. Nebraska, Michigan still kind of waiting on that phone call. Scotty is in. Tuck is good to have Tuck back in the stream.
But can I quickly say something? I know the starting five is very important. But
I'm just continuing. Black Hills Brandon's here along with Tim.
The one thing that's throwing me off about the Fa'amoa recruitment is you don't narrow it down to 2 schools and then go take another visit, right? Does that not strike you as a little bit weird? To narrow it down, it's between Nebraska and Michigan.
You're shopping.
And then you get the news today when you already have it down to 2. Well, now you're over to Wake Forest. Is that a leverage play? Is that because you realize that the 2 schools that wanted you a week ago no longer want you? Well, what does that mean?
Can I say what it is? It's, and I'm not blaming or shaming. It's a dude looking for a bag.
You think Wake Forest is going to give you a bag? Maybe. Maybe I don't know their situation.
Well,
that's what's weird.
I would say it's going to be easier to go play at Wake Forest than it is at Michigan or Nebraska.
That is fair. I guess that side of it I can understand if you're looking for that NFL bag instead of an NIL bag, I guess. But that news struck me as quite weird today. That it's Nebraska and Michigan, and now you're a week later going to Wake Forest.
And you know what? The window is, the market today ain't the market yesterday. That's real. But you know what? Nebraska maybe has moved on. And this kid could be really pretty good. I mean, Washington State's a physical, talented offensive line. I like the Polynesian connection. But bleep or get off the pot, frankly. And if it's Michigan or Nebraska that think you can play for them, then sign up. But where are you at in your football life from a competition and a financial situation? So, eventually teams will just move on. And you got to be right. You got to spend money on the right guy, and you got to spend money the right way. And it goes quarterback, and it goes offensive line, it goes defensive line, or it goes defensive line or offensive line. But those are your 3 priorities. Who's with us?
We go to Bert.
Bert, what's going on? Thanks for checking in.
Hey, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that offensive tackle from Washington State took the visit to Wake Forest because his coach or one of his coaches went there, I believe.
Yeah, we were just touching on the fact Wake was there, and that's a really good second reason aside from the bag and the playing time. But, yeah, if you've got familiarity and you got a coach moving on, and, the head coach moved on from
Washington State.
From Washington State, Dickert moved on to Wake. So that would make sense from a familiarity standpoint. That trumps all of it, Bert. You're absolutely right.
All right, good show. Thanks, guys.
See you, man. Appreciate it.
And Justin also chimes in to say here it could have just been a courtesy visit.
Yeah.
It's always possible.
Hey, well, I've been to Winston-Salem, and not going to miss it.
Which side, Winston or Salem?
Wherever.
Because I assume that's 2 towns that have merged together, have grown into each other.
Something like that. It was a college that was built by I think it was R.J. Reynolds, a tobacco mogul, and he put a university there. It's a private school. It's where Brian Piccolo went, if you remember Brian's song, and also I believe Arnold Palmer went there. So, and Chris Paul, Tim Duncan, Rodney Rogers.
Still haven't named a football player yet.
And I'm running out of people. Jim Grobe was highly encouraged to keep the staff that was at Nebraska if he was interested in following Bill Callahan. When Jim Grobe was looking at Nebraska and his option offense.
All I know is when you have 2 cities that have merged together, my number one thought, kind of Omaha and Council Bluffs, where you definitely have one side that's better.
Wow.
I won't say which one is which. I won't say which one is which. I won't go that far.
See if you get invited across the river again.
But my other... Let's move on here. I may have dug myself a hole. The other one I'm well aware of. How many other cities
has a nudie bar right next to the ball field?
Not enough. As an umpire, not enough.
I could name you one.
But the other one I'm well aware of is East Lansing with Lansing in Michigan, where Lansing sucks, East Lansing sucks. I wonder if between Winston and Salem.
East Lansing's money.
East Lansing's awesome. Lansing, I was scared. Winston and Salem.
Well, you were wearing Michigan gear, so I don't know what do you expect.
Well, if Winston and Salem have grown together, I bet there's one side that's nice and one side that's garbage, right? Probably. I feel like that's how those things go.
I just know that I was underwhelmed by the famed Carolina barbecue.
Oh.
I'm going to get a death threat from Bill Hooks.
I've always been a Memphis-style barbecue guy myself.
Give me the old dry rub. Limited sauce. Let's hear from Fred. How's that sound?
Yeah, let's get
Should we hear
back
from
to
Fred
business.
Hoiberg? Yeah, let's back to business here. Bill Doleman with us in about 20 minutes. And Jacob Padilla will talk Creighton. We'll talk Big Red basketball, Nebraska-UCLA. And let's hear from Fred about taking care of that darn basketball. Nebraska averages 12 turnovers a game, 17 against Michigan State that did him in. In their other loss, they were right around 15, I think, against St. Mary's, and they kind of they hover. They've been as good as only 7. I think that was the number against Creighton, but they were as bad as 17 against Michigan State. You're going to see a similar type physicality with UCLA tomorrow.
The ones that bother are just the careless, mindless ones. We stepped on the sideline twice the other game. That just eats away your insides. We had 3 straight possessions where we turned it over that led to dunks on the other end. And, I guess the one good thing is we're facing a defense very similar to what we just faced as far as pick and roll coverage, as far as, being ball hawks out there. They had great hands. And, we didn't handle it great with the turnovers. And we have to clean it up. If we want to win consistently in this league, we have to value possessions much better than what we're doing right now and finish possessions better than what we're doing right now. And UCLA is going to test us in both of those areas on Saturday afternoon. So, we got to get off to a good start as far as taking care of the ball, getting quality looks, getting shots up on the glass. If you turn it over, they turn it into dunks and layups and threes on the other end. So we have to take care of the ball. We have to value possessions.
Righto, and there's been and you just heard in his voice how PG he went with his frustration. The tone was R-rated, and it should be, because it's just mindless, just stupid passes that turn into points, and you've dodged that against lesser teams. Hopefully you're prepared because of what buzzsaw you faced in East Lansing. All right, Michigan State got you ready. They played grown man basketball. They drilled you. They embarrassed you, and you bounced back the right way. You're 1-1 right now. Your next 5 is vital, absolutely vital here for kind of planting your flag as a team that's beyond the bubble, or at least in that bubble contention. Right now, your net is good. But you got UCLA at home. You're on the road for back-to-back at Iowa Tuesday, BTN a week from Sunday at Purdue, and then Rutgers, and then you're at Maryland. Wisconsin's there, SC's there, Illinois. This is a vital stretch, and you get to do it in a place you've won 19 straight. We'll wind down hour 1 next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
One final time this hour, we invite you to take us with on your timeline, Hail Varsity Radio podcast, and just search Hail Varsity Radio, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, the entire show, or just the segments you want to hear. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel, thanks for spending time. We talked on Nebraska and this stretch here, right? You're into the new year. Nebraska a chance to defend home court. Their last loss at PBA was Creighton a year ago. You're working on win number 20. And consecutively, it's going to take a big-time effort against UCLA tomorrow. But Nebraska has 8 games in this month, starting with UCLA tomorrow at Iowa, at Purdue, hosting Rutgers, at Maryland, hosting SC, at Wisconsin, and then hosting Illinois. I think a optimistic outlook in these 8 games is 6-2, 7-1. I think, I don't know, maybe you can steal one at Iowa.
Well, here's the question. In the new Big Ten, what do you need to be a tournament team at the end of the year? Does 500 in conference play?
I think 500 gets you in.
Because there's probably going to be 10 teams that make it in this year. Am I crazy for
Since
thinking
you've
that?
expanded.
Since you've expanded, I mean, UCLA and Oregon are both tournament teams this season.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you could make a strong argument that the Big Ten moving forward, 10 is going to be the baseline.
Well, and does Rutgers get it together? They were kind of preseason hyped. They're uber talented. They'll eventually kick it into gear. You've kind of broke Wisconsin. At least you did a year ago. But going to Madtown's never easy. They were ranked pretty high in the preseason. Illinois had some impressive wins. They come to Lincoln to end the month. So you start it with UCLA, you end it with Illinois. You got to go to play Purdue on the road. Iowa also 10-3. Maryland at 11-3. Some really strong squads.
But one thing I think that we need to consider with Nebraska is there's 2 points. Scott makes 1 point. He says Nebraska plays good defense, so they can always be competitive, which is very true. And then Nebraska has a guy offensively in the Big Ten that, as a 3-level scorer, might be the best in the conference. I'm not saying he's the best in the conference in Bryce Williams, but his ability to score at all 3 levels
nice call.
Might put him among the scoring elite in the Big Ten because, if you take away the 3-point shot, it opens up the drive in the mid-range. If you try to take away the drive in the mid-range, it's opening up the 3. If you double, he's a good enough passer. Like, one of those complete scoring options that we haven't seen at Nebraska dating back to probably James Palmer.
No, and he reminds me of Palmer when it comes to getting to the rim and finishing. I mean, he's good at absorbing the contact. The thing I like about Bryce is he knows his spot on the floor, and that's either to the left or the right of the free throw line for that mid-range. Nebraska needs a bucket. Bryce can get the ball there and make that shot to hopefully stop some bleeding, because this team's not immune from some scoring droughts or being loose with the basketball, but he's been able to in these games, aside from Michigan State, where nobody really stepped up after the first 4 minutes of the second half and made a play. Let's hear from Bryce. Was asked about protecting home court. Does it mean more since it's UCLA tomorrow? And Bryce has been on the run here with some national awards, well-deserved. Cut 18 from Bryce Williams.
I wouldn't say it's any more than it would normally be. I feel like every time anybody comes here, we want to defend home court. But, I mean, we're focused. We're ready. We're going to bring our A game. Everybody's ready, and we're just ready to, put the world on notice, put the Big Ten on notice.
Hey, love the confidence. We'll see what Nebraska can do when it comes to taking care of the ball. And love that brand coming in tomorrow with Nebraska-UCLA. PBA at 1 o'clock. We'll dive into some Nebraska thoughts. Bill Doleman on the way, Jacob Padilla next hour.
He's the pride of Fairbury, an average Joe. Bill Doleman, the professor.
I had a 6 ACT in 1967. One time I got an A and my grandma beat me for cheating.
Now with Hail Varsity Radio.
We have missed him. It's been a week since we've talked to the pride of Fairbury, Bill Doleman, the professor at Bill Doleman, where you find him on Twitter. You hear him with the Average Joe Sports Show podcast. Billy D is down in SEC country where there's not a winter storm watch that starts at noon tomorrow for much of southeastern Nebraska. That includes the greater Fairbury region. Billy D, how we doing?
I'm feeling pretty good after hearing that the winter storm is coming through your area and not mine. So that's welcome news.
Brother, you had some tornadoes messing with you.
It's like it's not all sunshine and rain.
Yeah, that is true. Well, we got down here to near the Gulf, and I think it was like the first night, and the TV station that we're watching deliver the tornado activity in the area decides to tell us they're headed for cover. So it's kind of like, hey, you're on your own.
It's kind of like Don Zimmer wearing the old Army hat in the dugout after a foul ball. Just got to be ready. Tiger Shark Diver seems to think that you are Clausborne. True or false? You are not Clausborne.
I am not Clausborne, but my signature, I could do a Clausborne Osborne signature. So
let's tell that story, or no?
No, I don't think we better. I really don't think we better. That might go to the grave. Yeah. That's more better for private conversation than public consumption.
I love that. Well, there's so many things, man. The Bill Doleman Confidential, the memoir.
Yeah.
I love it.
I'd buy it.
I'd buy it too. Tell me this inside baseball thought. What were when you'd get the rolling bar cart ready for a famous guy that won a couple of national championships? Was it all Jack, or was it a mixture of bottles?
Oh, it was a variety that stocked the bar, because he had a variety of guests,
right,
who would come into the office. So yeah, you couldn't just have one bottle of Jack and call it good. I mean, there was a variety of people who liked to come by and imbibe with Bob, shall we say.
Well, and I mean, if Sinatra popped by, it was going to be Jack Daniels. If it was the head of the NCAA,
I don't know what he gave. What was that? Was that Walter Byers that day?
What did he give Byers?
I'm not quite sure, but whatever he gave him, they certainly waived whatever problem Nebraska was having going into that Florida State game in, what was that, about 1986 or so.
80, and it didn't work out in 86, or did they win in 86? They lost.
They won that game. That was the night game that kicked off the college football season. Primetime football. Florida State's in town. Nebraska's in trouble for
illegal ticket
scandal.
Yes.
Yeah. Ticket scandal, which seems like less than peanuts compared to what's being done with college football players getting money these days. But yeah, whatever was in the fridge and the bar worked, because everybody got to play. Nebraska got the win. And everybody was happy after that.
Well, Bill, what do you make of essentially the SEC's decade of dominance coming to seemingly a close this year, now that all the schools can pay players and you also have a transfer portal that kind of disperses the town a little bit more?
You can't hoard backups, and you can't buy backups. Oh, hold on. You can't stockpile your rosters
There
anymore.
it is. Yeah, is it?
However you did it.
Coincidence or no? Am I reading too much into 1 year in a 12-team college football playoff?
I think you're reading too much into it, because now they're going to know what it is they need to do to invest to make sure that doesn't happen again. I mean, if Duke is paying a guy to transfer from Tulane a reported $8 million for 2 years, what do you think the SEC is going to do to try to, say, lure a former 5-star quarterback back into the conference to play his last year or two of college football? Just painting a hypothetical, but you don't think that Texas A&M and Alabama and Georgia and all those schools aren't going to go, wait a minute here. Duke's paying a reported $4 million a year for a Tulane transfer, and we get shut out of the well, other than Texas, the traditional SEC schools get shut out. We now know what it is that we need to start paying in order to make sure that this doesn't happen again.
Hypothetically, I mean, it'd be worth $1 million a month, wouldn't it?
Oh, I would think. I mean, look at it this way.
$12 million?
Look at this. Look. The Major League Baseball doesn't have a salary cap, right? But everybody gets revenue sharing off of TV and licensing and all that, right? So, but the Dodgers and the Yankees, are still able to outspend everybody because they can. The SEC is going to have those teams who want to invest: Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama. I would think Auburn and Ole Miss would like to get into the varsity game with those others. Texas A&M, is going to spend stupid money. I would think that they will just up the ante in terms of what they're willing to pay until somebody says you can't do that.
Well, they need to spend it on the right guys. And forever, that's been the problem with the old SEC or Southwest Conference. They're buying a backup.
Right.
I mean, you got to make sure you pay the right guys now. Bill, talk to me about Arizona State, Texas, and the targeting, non-targeting. Did the two brothers, the big guy and the little guy from Smokey and the Bandit, get a hold of the replay official?
I'm like Kenny Dillingham. I don't know what the rule is anymore, and I think we've found that out over the last couple of years. I think what you need to have is the verbiage from basketball and have a flagrant 1 or a flagrant 2. And if it's a flagrant 1, which I suppose you could say, look, there's going to be incidental helmet-to-helmet contact on every single play. Mm-hmm. So if you've got a play like that where you throw the flag because you think well, okay, maybe it's a 15-yard, and that to me that should have been because of the snap back of the head. That probably should have been a targeting penalty, and I would say an F1. And if you have one where a guy's like a heat-seeking missile, launching in head first, that's probably an F2 and an ejection. I don't think you need to suspend, but I think that they missed the boat on that. Especially if you took a look at it, there must have been something that you didn't like about it. But I don't think every helmet-to-helmet contact is targeting. They've kind of proven that because they've waved some off. I think that could have easily been called targeting, though. Well, it didn't give Arizona State a chance to miss a field goal at the end of regulation. Right. That penalty should have been called, I think. But is it as simple as needing Texas in the Cotton Bowl against Ohio State for viewership versus Arizona State? I don't know, maybe, but the Arizona State kind of became a darling, just like those lower conference teams do in the NCAA tournament, St. Peter's and Fairleigh Dickinson, that people get enamored with for a week or two, and then you realize there's no way in hell they're going to, win the Final Four. Loyola Chicago is an anomaly, but the best teams don't make the field of 68, right? They're just fun stories for a weekend, and then you got another weekend of blowouts. But look, the Scatterboot kid became, a hell of a story. He's fun, and he gets people to turn the TV to watch Arizona State football. They're a good football team. I think they're probably better than Indiana and Clemson, and deserving of a top 6 seed. But I think that they were enough of a story and a good enough team that they would have been compelling against Ohio State. But I'm not sure anybody's going to beat the Buckeyes right now. And I look forward to seeing who their new head coach is going to be next year. Yeah, and I'm going to have to eat some crow on the Average Joe Sports Show about my Ohio State prediction. That's just a quick aside. It's okay. The Fighting Jim Hansons are off and running to take on Penn State. And we were talking about a tweet sent out earlier. We were reminiscing about the times Beano Cook would come on the show before Beano's passing. And wow, it'd be we're going way back. Well, yeah, it's 21 years now. And Beano would talk for 20 minutes, and then he'd talk for another 20 off the air about his fun times with Bob. I never did ask Beano what he drank. And then some kid came in with a bottle of Seagram's. Right, and I'd never asked Beano what he drank. And I kind of smiled because Tim Brando is doing the ball game tomorrow on Fox. And he was tight with Beano, and every time Beano would answer the phone, his little apartment in Pittsburgh, Lieutenant Colombo here. That's how he'd answer it, and he'd ask you to send him betting lines because he didn't have an internet. So I'd mail him betting lines for the season. Oh, I'm not kidding. Oh, that's hilarious. Somewhere in my black book, I've got his home address. But Beano said that cheering for the Penn State Notre Dame, this was their first regular season matchup, 1981, was like cheering for someone to win Stalingrad. So, well, he was a former Pittsburgh. He's a SID. Pittsburgh SID. So he had a hate for both of them. Yeah, he absolutely did. But the Irish, man, they play football, they tackle. Pride of Burke, Xavier Watts is killing it for a second straight year. They are physical. They are so good, and they're fun to watch, man. I guess circle me a Notre Dame fan. I'm going to have to borrow Jim Hanson's green Joe Montana jersey here for next weekend. And they do so without, this, fancy passing attack. Riley Leonard was, 14 of 30 or something for 90 yards? Yeah, it was bad. He had 2 completions. Let's face it, though, they took advantage of, a guy making his first start at quarterback in Gunnar Stockton. And, all that transpired at the end of the half, Georgia never recovered from that. And then the kickoff return for the touchdown. But look, Notre Dame is fundamentally sound. There's no question about it. They're a very good football team. But I'm still watching this going, how is it that we have independence when they've made all of these teams, get together in these super conferences, and Notre Dame still gets to be an independent? I don't know how that is going to continue to operate in the future, but They've certainly have the power to do whatever it is that they want to do. And I'm really, for those watching in the stream, I've got this Star Trek beam me up Scotty thing going on that I kind of disappear and come back, which is really kind of cool to watch. But anyway, no, Notre Dame is a good football team.
You got the old Aaron Rodgers treatment going.
Going ayahuasca.
Yeah, that's what I started that docu-series on Netflix over the breather/bender we have been on the past week. Bill, want to get your take, and I know, Elijah, you're going to jump into on Husker hoops. Big stretch for Nebraska basketball, Fred and company. The Bruins, Mick Cronin coming to town. 19-game win streak at PBA. Going to be nuts tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Can't wait to be there. And I know Nebraska's going to have to take care of the basketball and be tougher than they were against Michigan State.
Well, Hoiberg compared them to Michigan State, and we all know how that 37-point bludgeoning turned out. And it was probably not even that close, to be honest with you. But Nebraska's coming off a championship in the Diamond Head Classic, so maybe a little bit of momentum. This is a game that, first to 60 wins, because Nebraska is known for its defense. UCLA has turned into a defensive team. They're forcing like nine steals a game, and Nebraska turns the ball over too much. So Nebraska's got to take care of the basketball and try to force some UCLA turnovers. You would hope that Buchtengel has a good game against his former team. Mm-hmm. Bryce Williams right now is not just playing at an all Big Ten level, but an all-America level. And if he can continue to play like he is with the confidence that he has, he's been unstoppable. You'd hope that Esigian can hit some threes, although UCLA's defense is, sub 30% in allowing teams to hit their three-point shots. So, like I said, this might be a real low-scoring game, which, if it's low-scoring and there aren't that many points, then either team's got a chance to win it. I wish this game was being played after the semester began. I'm hoping that there are students around, and maybe there are, that'll show up and make it a home court advantage. But I think a game like this for students to enjoy, Nebraska and UCLA renewing its storied 8-game rivalry, and UCLA playing in Lincoln for the first time since 1955. I think that'd be kind of fun for students to enjoy that and provide the home court advantage. So I think that's the downside to this. How raucous will PBA be? And can Nebraska hit shots against their defense?
Well, to be fair, last year Nebraska pulled the upset against Purdue while the students were on winter break.
That is true.
It was middle-aged folks sitting in the student section.
That is true. Any of my students show up automatically get a C.
What'd you say? I cut you off.
I said any of my students who show up automatically get at least a C.
Okay.
We'll get Justice on the line because we could use it back in here in studio.
I love that. I love that promise right there. C's get degrees, baby. C is good enough for me.
We're proof positive of that.
I am. Absolutely. Billy D, you got a prediction before we say sayonara?
For Nebraska, UCLA?
Yeah.
Pain. I think I like what Nebraska did in the Pinstripe Bowl. And again, you just don't win Diamond Head Classics and Pinstripe Bowls in the same week. And so what was the final score of the Pinstripe Bowl? 21-17, something like that?
20 to
15, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll go with that. It's a defensive slugfest, and Nebraska pulls it out. So a Diamond Head Classic championship, a Pinstripe Bowl world title, and a win over UCLA all in the same week
with the
same score.
And the unders. I love it. Billy D, stay away from flying double wides, all right?
No problem.
There he is. Pride of Fairbury, Bill Doleman. Bill, appreciate you. Jacob Padilla on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
It's nice to see Ed Foley in the stream yet again on a Friday. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Hope you're doing all right. Friday edition of Hail Varsity. Hail Varsity YouTube, where you can watch. Hail Varsity Radio Twitter. Can check it out on that platform as well. And as always, Hail Varsity Radio Network. Jacob Padilla with us from Hail Varsity and Hurrdat Sports at Jacob Padilla _ talking some hoops. Jacob, good to be with you again. Thanks for some time. How we doing?
Hey, I'm doing all right. It's just getting ready for this weather that's about to hit us this weekend.
Yeah, it's no good, but couch is always open, brother. If it gets too snowmageddon for you. I want to ask you, we'll get to some Creighton Marquette. That tips off in a little bit. Get your take on that one, but just also start off here. Nice, I guess, pedestal for Nebraska tomorrow on Big Fox against UCLA, a good UCLA squad. And as you kind of followed along with this Nebraska basketball team, we'll go there. And what's your confidence level with Nebraska from a ball security standpoint? It sounds like I'm talking football, but we know turnovers have been an issue, or at least handling the ball from time to time, getting Nebraska out of rhythm. Do you feel good, or is that a coin flip for you tomorrow against this UCLA D?
Yeah, it's weird. Nebraska, their overall turnover rate isn't terrible. They're pretty average, kind of 158 overall. Where they're really bad is on non-field turnovers, which is mostly just like passes out of bounds and travels and moving screens and that type of stuff, which if you're going to have turnovers, those are the kinds you want because they allow you to set your defense. That being said, they're also the kind of attention to detail and focus and types of things that you don't want to be committing. So it's kind of a weird dichotomy there, and something that Nebraska needs to figure out. Like, yeah, if you're going to have turnovers, have them be the dead ball type, but also you don't want to be committing those turnovers. So it is UCLA is a very good defensive team. Obviously, we're going to see two really good defensive teams in this one coming up, but they are best in the country at turning teams over. So Nebraska cannot afford to make the careless mistakes, be loose with the ball, try to do too much and turn the ball over that way, because UCLA is really good at capitalizing on those, and that's kind of what they thrive on.
It's Jacob Padilla with us here. And Jacob, if you put on your coaching hat, pretend you're Mick Cronin this week, or even pretend you're Hoiberg this week, what do you see as the weak link for the Husker basketball team right now? And I ask that because I want to know, what are you emphasizing all week at practice if you're UCLA to attack Nebraska? Or to flip it around, if you're Nebraska, what are you focusing on in practice? What do you need to shore up as you enter the heart of the Big Ten season?
Yeah, Nebraska's gotten better. Early on, you kind of looked like there was a lot of, it was like with the defensive end, it was kind of a lot of gambling and a lot of kind of just the things we've talked about in the past with flying around and kind of what that opens you up to in terms of getting rotation and teams that are smart enough to attack that. Teams haven't been able to really get them for that. The offensive rebounding is something that at times has been an issue, but overall, like you look at their rate for the season, and it's pretty darn close. Like they give up about as much as they get on the offensive glass. So it's not terrible. You look across the board, there's nothing really that they're terrible at this season. So that's kind of an interesting kind of place for Nebraska to be, where they've improved enough to the point where they're just a solid team across the board. Obviously, again, some of the turnovers, some of the offensive rebounds, the extra possessions, that's somewhere where maybe Nebraska hasn't been terrible at it, but it's not their strongest, and we've seen moments of them being poor in that area. So that's something. So crashing the offensive glass and force those turnovers, like we were talking about, because it's really hard to win if you lose the possessions battle, and if the other team is just getting more and more cracks at scoring points than you do. So that's probably kind of one area where maybe you don't feel super confident about Nebraska in that area, but it's not like it's a fatal flaw that kills them every single game. So that's kind of, I think, how Nebraska has gotten to the point where they are, where they're just a really sound basketball team now. The question is, do they have the talent enough to execute against the best teams they'll face? And UCLA is right up there with the best teams they'll see in the first half of the season. Pretty comparable to Michigan State. So we'll see if they can maintain this execution that we've seen over the last handful of games as the competition level rises significantly.
Jacob Padilla is with us. Hurrdat Sports, Hail Varsity, at Jacob Padilla _ on Twitter is where you find him. Jacob, you look at the resume part of this for Nebraska. You've got some good wins. You took care of things in Hawaii. You also got rocked by Sparty. Quality showing against St. Mary's. And now here's UCLA. How big not only is tomorrow for Nebraska's resume, but really the stretch of January, when you look at the schedule and the opportunity, is this a make-it month for Nebraska?
Well, you just look at what did they do last year to make it as far as they did. They took their home court, right? Mm-hmm. They swept everybody at PBA and in Big Ten play at least. And so that's kind of what you're looking at them again, because there's not a ton on the non-conference resume, especially with Creighton struggling as much as it has this year. So they don't really have a whole lot there in the non-conference. So it's going to have to be doing work in the Big Ten again this year to kind of make their case for a good seed in the NCAA tournament. And that starts with taking care of business at home. So this is their chance to go out and get that really quality win to put at the top of their resume, getting a top 20 UCLA team at home at PBA, coming off of Nebraska having a stretch here where they played really good basketball. And now you've had a few days to prepare for this one, and hopefully that they feel good about their game plan going in and ways that they're going to be able to attack the Bruins. Hopefully there are a few more points than the last time that Mick Cronin coached against Nebraska.
The old rock fight with Cincy?
Yeah, the 57-56 or 56-55, I think it was.
Uh-huh.
So hopefully we get a few more points than that, because that certainly isn't fun to watch. But it's going to be two tough defensive teams, and if Nebraska was able to get this, to like I said, to put at the top of their resume, that's big going forward, because they do have 2 road games coming up at Iowa and at Purdue, and neither one of those are going to be easy. Kempom projects them to lose both those before they get back home against Rutgers, and then you got to go to Maryland. So they got some tough. You got at Wisconsin later in the month as well. So they've got some really tough road games coming up this month, and so they've got to hold serve at home in order to put together that resume that they need.
It's Jacob Padilla with us here, Hail Varsity Radio. And Jacob, quickly before we get a thought on Creighton, I guess this kind of is the transition point. What do you make of the home court advantage that we've seen for both Nebraska and Creighton in recent seasons?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Like Nebraska fan base for sure gets into it. I mean, most of the years that I was there, they weren't great, so it wasn't really something that you could make great use of, because the team just wasn't good enough for that little boost to matter all that much. So since the last couple of years, I haven't been there game in and game out to really see the impact that it has. Obviously, we know how devoted the Nebraska fan base is, just in general, among all sports. And we've seen what they're capable of rising up and doing with the No-Sit Sunday a very long time ago now, but it's still the same fan base and everything. So we know that the highs that the PBA atmosphere is able to get to, it is interesting that they are so successful now, and that has been such a good home court advantage. Because I think Kempom right now rates their home court advantage as 58th in Division I. So I mean, that's pretty good. It's not necessarily elite, but it's top 75 there. I don't know what it is. Like it's not. It doesn't seem like the most intimidating place to play. Just in terms of you don't necessarily we've seen some moments in the past where obviously the student section with Mo Wagner and things like that where there's been a little bit more bite and a little bit more from the crowd really getting on players and all that. Obviously, we know that the Chucky Hepburn booing situation and all that type of stuff. We've seen some moments where the fans have really kind of taken on themselves to get in the game and go at the opposing teams, but it's not a place that's known for just being absolutely brutal to play at. It just seems to be that Nebraska, now that they've got a team that can compete, they play really well there for whatever reason. They're able to execute their stuff at a high rate. They make shots, and they just get into a better rhythm at home. Like, obviously, the home road, that's something that exists everywhere in college basketball. That's why we talk about it so much. But Nebraska just seems to be an extreme case of that. And then Creighton, too. That's another one where, like, the fans aren't necessarily the most intense, but when that place gets rocking, and the Creighton, I think their style of play when they're playing well really lends itself to engaging the fan base, just with the up tempo, the threes, the dunks, like that sequence where Kalkbrenner blocked the shot, ran the floor, and threw down an alley-oop ball in about 5 seconds there. Like, those are the kind of plays that will get a crowd anywhere going on their feet, and I think Creighton does a good job of taking advantage of that. So while it may not be the kind of the most intense or combative crowd that you'll find, it is one that supports the team once they get into a rhythm that the team can really feed off of.
Big one tonight, Jacob, about 15 seconds. Creighton have a shot against Marquette.
They cannot lose the possessions battle. They have to take care of the ball so much better than they did against St. John's and in the past. That is the entire game right there. If they take care of the ball, they don't give up a bunch of offensive rebounds, they'll give themselves a chance, but those are areas they struggled so far this season.
Jacob, have a great weekend. Appreciate all the coverage, man, and we'll do it again next time. Thank you so much.
All right, talk to you guys soon.
All right, there he is, Jacob Padilla with us. Clausborne's on the way.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you at Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Check us out on the stream. YouTube is where you can watch the show. Hail Varsity YouTube. Like and subscribe. Hail Varsity Radio Twitter. Shout out Captain as he's in. Also Red Wine checking in. Appreciate those folks for saying hey. Plenty of thoughts with Nebraska and UCLA. We'll have our predictions here in a moment with Claus. Ed Foley continues to hang out. Kobe, good to have you. Mike Corrigan checks in as well. Yep. Lots of thoughts on Nebraska UCLA. Without further ado, we bring him in to another new year. He's imaginary. He wears red. Clausborne is with us here on Hail Varsity for the Friday forecast. Claus, how are you? Happy New Year.
Well, Happy New Year to you as well, Christopher and Elijah. And I'm doing well. I'm still riding high and basking in the glow of a big win behind our big and strong Johnson. So it's going to be hard to bring me down this week.
Oh.
I think we made a joke about that in the post-game show.
Well, Kevin, in the stream,
there it is. Yeah,
I actually made the phone call. That was part of the Real Red Reaction show with Kevin making the phone call, saying, tip of the cap to Claus because he called it with
those Johnsons hitting the hole hard
with Emmett and Ramir playing well. Right. Claus, get the crystal ball out. We're going to ask you about PBA tomorrow, but we got to talk. I put this Minnesota-Virginia Tech game on the board. It's underway, isn't it? Or is it kicked off yet? We don't care.
I've been locked in on this radio show personally.
Yeah. Well, look at you, not being a degenerate. The Fighting Flex -9.5 against Virginia Tech. Let us go to the scores table and ask the judges. Okay, I'm good. We're okay. We don't care, but it's a chance for Claus to comment on PJ Flex, so he couldn't pass it up. It doesn't kick off till 6:30. I'm going to go with Minnesota. Virginia Tech has had an up and down year. Fleck, really. I mean, they were hosed in one game. You look at the Michigan onside kick. They swept California. Really, you could make a real strong argument. They beat Illinois. They're a top 5 Big Ten team this year, conference-wise, but they ended up at 7-5. Give me Minnesota to cover it, 31 to 17 with the Gophers. What say you, Elijah?
Yeah, the Big Ten's been pretty dominant in postseason play this year. I think that trend continues. Minnesota's a team, I think the team that probably showed the most improvement throughout this football season. I think 15 bowl practices means they're going to show even more. Give me Minnesota to win this football game 38-17.
Claus, what say you? Gophers going with Minnesota, or are you going with the Hokies?
Well, I suppose I'm really going to have to sort of defer to you guys. I didn't watch a whole lot of Minnesota this year because the Fox networks haven't figured out how to reduce the glare off of P.J. Fleck's head, and I find it a bit too distracting, much like tinsel or whatever it was that was on Frank Beamer's neck when he was coaching Virginia Tech. So
the goiter?
Goiter, whatever you want to call it. It's not going to help Virginia Tech tonight, A, because he's not coaching, and B, because Minnesota's too good, 35, and Virginia Tech 17.
Next Thursday, it is Notre Dame and Penn State, -1.5. So before next week's forecast, we're going to have to sneak this one in. The Irish are playing good football. We're early, but we'll take it as we talk Orange Bowl. I like Notre Dame, and I think their quarterback, despite being pedestrian, I guess, in the passing game, can make some plays with his legs, and he takes care of the football better than Penn State's quarterback. That's my difference. Defensive ball game, 24-21. Give me Notre Dame to get to the championship game. Elijah.
Yeah, there's been smoke in the past about 2 weeks about is Drew Aller going to change his mind and end up declaring for this 2025 draft based on a strong playoff. He's been playing fantastic, but he hasn't played a great defense yet in the playoff. And Notre Dame has a great defense. I think they're going to ride that defense and get a 24-21 victory, a win and cover for the Irish against Penn State.
So we're saying the same score.
Yeah,
all right.
I got about the same as you.
Go hard against it, ladies and gentlemen. If we're in agreement with the same score, run. Claus, what say you? Notre Dame or Penn State?
Boy, giving me a platform to talk about a game between Notre Dame and Penn State is like handing an arsonist a handful of matches and a can full of gas.
Yeah.
Wait.
But all I'll say is I hope parents are paying attention because this will be the first Orange Bowl rated TVMA, not suitable for kids. It's going to be a Notre Dame win.
No.
He said it, not us.
Oh, my Lord.
Notre Dame will win the game 23-20, and we'll all have to go light a candle at the grotto after that one.
Wow. Moving on to the NFL.
How do you move on from that?
Kansas City at Denver. The Fighting Donks need a win, Elijah, to get in the playoffs. -10. It's Kansas City's backup. Just to mess with you, give me the Chiefs outright. 20. That look is glorious. 21-17 Chiefs.
The Chiefs are starting a backup quarterback, but you know it's the Chiefs. They're going to have the best backup quarterback in the league in Carson Wentz. Whether you believe that or not, he's won an MVP. So, emotional hedge bet, Chiefs win and break Elijah's heart. 21-20.
All right, Claus, you say Denver or Kansas City?
Well, first, as you fellows know, I've always been one that believes that you should take accountability for your actions. And it was my fault. Back in the 80s, I'm the one who invented and popularized the fumblerooski. And now here we are some 40 years later being annoyed by the word coming out of Andy Reid's mouth hundreds of times a game. So, my bad. I'll take Denver in this one, maybe so they'll stop putting him in so many commercials. The Broncos 20 and the Chiefs 14.
Minnesota, Detroit. Let's talk home field. Let's talk Vikings. Detroit's banged up. They're giving up a lot of points. Goff has played great football. The Fighting Dwight Schrutes have been pretty big time. Give me the Vikings. And give me the Vikings by a field goal. Outright, 27-24 over Detroit.
History has shown you that the Lions are going to let their fan base down. I think they do it.
Man.
I think they do it again this season, but I think they do it in the worst way possible. They get home field, and then they blow it in the divisional round. So give me Detroit to win this football game, 31-28.
Claus, a quick thought here: Vikes or Lions?
Well, frankly, that line seems like Vegas teasing Viking fans. 2.5. We all know how hard it is for Minnesota Vikings to get 3 points when they need them. There's only 2 words you can't say on television in Minnesota, and they are Gary and Anderson.
No.
So I'm going to take the Lions in this one by more than that, 24 and Minnesota 20.
We'll talk UCLA, Nebraska next.
And now, back to Hail Varsity Radio.
Back with you, it's Hail Varsity. Chris Schmidt, Elijah Herbel. Clausborne continues on with us here in the Friday forecast, and we invite you to check out the podcast, Hail Varsity Radio, and find it Spotify, iTunes, Google Play when you search Hail Varsity Radio. So, big showdown at PBA tomorrow. Nebraska-UCLA. The Bruins -1.5. Reminder to get buckled up. Use your seatbelt. It saves lives, prevents injuries only if properly worn. Make it. Click a message from the NDOT Highway Safety Office. Mick Cronin back at PBA. First time since his Cincinnati days. And I think Nebraska gets it handled. The Pride of Fairbury, Bill Doleman correct. The first to 60 gets it done. And Nebraska 63-60 over UCLA, another top 25 win for the mayor, and the Big Red smiling as we get into 2025. Elijah.
The home court advantage streak here
is
for
real.
Nebraska. It's real. It's a big factor. PBA is a hard place to go and win. I think Bill mentioned a good point about the fact the students are home. How does that affect things? We'll see. But as with any streaks have to come to an end. I think this UCLA team is probably the team to do it with how they're built defensively. They're going to make things tough on Nebraska. Low scoring. It's going to be nervous and tight the whole way through. UCLA pulls it out 64-60.
Wow. Look at you.
Hey, I took Nebraska against Creighton. I'm a realist here.
No, you were right.
I think the athleticism of this UCLA team can't be understated.
Well, and the pressure, the hype, the build-up, you've had a good run, and Bryce has been incredible. But the good thing about Bryce is for the most time in his career, he's let the game come to him. Does he press tomorrow? And I don't know why he would, but you know what? UCLA can make you do funny things on offense.
There's other guys that I worry about.
More so than Bryce.
Chucking things up whenever things aren't going Nebraska's way. Whenever the defense makes things rough and you're on a bit of a scoring drought, there's other guys that worry about chucking up some stuff they shouldn't.
All right, that's fair. Claus, what say you? Ed Foley in the stream says UCLA by 30. Don't think so. UCLA -1.5. Claus, what say you? Huskers and Bruins PBA.
You said it was X Foley who said UCLA by 30?
Ed Foley.
Oh, well, I wish he was X Foley along with everybody else.
We'll see.
Point is this, UCLA has the better program, the better tradition, the ability to win big championships, but they haven't done it for 50 years, which is why they are resurfacing Pauley Pavilion with cardboard, because nowadays UCLA plays better on paper. Nebraska 70 and UCLA 61.
Claus, almost a double-digit win. I love it. Good stuff. Claus says Nebraska to get that 70, man. I like it. Claus, it's been awesome to kick off another new year with you. Thanks for joining us, and we'll holler again.
Okay.
There he is, Claus. He's imaginary. He wears red. and part of the Friday forecast with Hail Varsity. Weekend edition tomorrow. Be there, 7:45-ish tomorrow morning on the YouTube channel. Excited to dive in, portal, playoff, and basketball. So pretty good stuff.
Do we have news regarding Ed Foley by tomorrow morning? Maybe. We'll see.
We may have a thought on Ed Foley. Maybe a release, maybe not. We'll talk tomorrow with Hail Varsity. Thanks for tuning in.